So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety Connection. Thank you for joining us for our session on the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development, we all know as MLITSD, their occupational hygiene campaigns for 2025 to 2026, and how to prepare. My name is Tony Volpato, and I am one of the presenters today, and pleased to be your host this morning. Gord Paduloma is also joining us from WSPS as a presenter. Our contact information is on the slide and also pinned at the top of the chat. If you have any questions after the session, we always welcome continuing the discussion, and we truly are here just to help you with any of your occupational hygiene questions. So thank you for attending today. We look forward to meeting you. So these campaigns actually started last year and have been extended for this year as well. So it will run until the end of the MLITSD fiscal year, which ends March 31st, 2026. And to better understand who is participating in our Safety Connections and ensure we're providing accessible training for all people in Ontario, we'd like to invite you to participate in a short survey this morning. We're collecting demographic information on behalf of our funder, which is the MLITSD. Your responses will be kept secure and anonymous, and the MLITSD will not receive any of your personal information. And thank you. I've just seen Jessica has put the link in our chat, so it should be pretty easy for you just to click that link there. And then, of course, completing the survey or answering any of the questions is optional, but to access the survey, you can click that link, and then the function number to get the survey started is on the screen as well, 230380. And it really is super quick. And thank you all for taking the time to complete this survey and helping to make health and safety training accessible for all. Before we get started, I'd like to review some of our webinar housekeeping items with you. Firstly, we recommend you use your computer audio with headphones, but phone conference audio is also available. The phone conference audio details can be found in the access email you received. Your camera and microphone will remain off for the remainder of the session. We definitely appreciate your participation throughout the webinar. So within this meeting, you have the option to use reactions, which are accessed in the menu bar across the top. And reactions will be instant and they'll float up the screen. So if everyone can give me a thumbs up or any other reaction that you like, so I know it's working, fantastic. Thank you. I see it's working. Wonderful. I know I'm not alone here. We will also be asking some poll questions throughout the webinar, which will pop up on your screen and or in the meeting chat. So please just select the answer that you like and click submit to participate in those poll questions. Depending on your organization's security, you may not be able to interact with that poll question. And if that happens, if you could just type your answer in the chat, that would be great. We'll still be able to see and you can participate that way. The meeting chat is accessed. I think a lot of you have already seen it and have used it, so thank you. It's along the top as well in the menu bar, and messages can be sent in the chat at any time. Just a reminder that the chat is public, and we definitely encourage, if you have questions, you can put them right in the chat when you think of them, and we'll try to be answering them as we go. But we hopefully will also have a bit of time at the end. Or if for some reason we don't get to your question, please just email us directly. We want to make sure you have the answers to all of your questions. Microsoft Teams also offers two accessibility features. So to enable the live captions, select More from the menu bar, Language and Speech, and then turn on live captions. To enable full screen mode, select View from the menu bar, More options, and then full screen. Both features can be disabled by following the same instructions. If you have any technical difficulties throughout the webinar, please send an email message in the meeting chat or respond to the access email you received. And we have people that will try to help you through that. But also sometimes just logging out and coming back in can fix any problems that you might encounter as well, if you want to give that a try. The Safety Connections program has 4 main goals: to learn, share, and discover what is of value to you, our clients, and our community, to connect virtually with industry peers, and to facilitate a best practice exchange, and also to provide an opportunity to attend health and safety webinars from your personal workspace. So now that our housekeeping is done, it's time to introduce our speakers. So again, I am Tony Volpato, a consultant in occupational hygiene and at WSPS. I joined WSPS over 25 years ago now as a health and safety consultant and delivered a variety of services such as conducting hazard assessments and facilitating training on a variety of health and safety topics, such as certification training for the JHSCs, WHMIS training, workplace inspections, and accident investigation. In 2019, I was very excited to earn the Certified Industrial Hygienist, or CIH, designation and currently provide a variety of occupational hygiene services, such as noise and air exposure assessments, respirator fit testing, and program development. I have a master's degree in health science from the University of Toronto and a CRSP designation. We are also pleased to have Gord with us this morning, and I invite him to tell us a little bit about himself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gord Paduloma. I'm very similar to Tony. I am one of the occupational hygienists here at WSPS. I also received my certified industrial hygienist designation. I received that in 2021, and I've been a member of WSPS since 2023. Prior to that, I have some background in the federal sector, as I'm from Ottawa. If anybody who's signed on earlier is aware, or I mentioned. But again, very similar to Tony, a wide variety of experiences, both in the noise air assessments and in many of the information that we want to pass along for you today. So welcome you all today, and I'll pass it back over to Tony.
Thanks, Gord. Our agenda today, we'd like to provide an overview of the 2 MLITSD occupational hygiene campaigns, the first being WHMIS training based on the amended hazardous products regulations, and the second is the worker exposures to chemical agents in the workplace. We will outline your obligations under the Act and the applicable regulations, and provide resources to support your compliance with these campaigns, and end off with some tips or insights into how you can be prepared if an inspector shows up at your workplace. So let's get started. Our first poll question. We'd like to get to know you a little bit better. Please respond to our first poll question. What industry do you work in? Is it you can click agriculture, manufacturing, service, or potentially another one that's not listed there. Let's see the answers starting to come in the chat. Thank you for submitting so I'm seeing we've got almost 50% manufacturing, a third in other. Other things could be, I see mining, healthcare, dental. If you're on other, yes, please put in your other right into the chat for us. Construction. Okay, very interesting. Thank you so much for joining today, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here with us today and want to do the best you can for your workers at your workplace. Municipal education. That's great. Thank you. Okay, we'll keep moving along. So now getting right into the campaigns. So here is an updated chart from the WSIB regarding the allowed fatalities over the past several years. So the blue at the bottom is the traumatic fatalities. The gray is the occupational disease fatalities, and green there is related to COVID fatalities. The MLITSD also report on their website that occupational diseases are the leading cause of worker deaths. So exposure to the hazardous chemical agents in your workplaces may result in the worker developing not only an occupational illness, but potentially even a fatality. So identifying, assessing, and controlling those exposures will help to lower the risk of workers developing an occupational disease or even a fatality. So it really was shocking to me when I first saw these statistics from WSIB, not only the total number of fatalities that do occur, but also that occupational disease fatalities far outnumber the traumatic incidents, which seem to be more obvious, right? We see them, they get reported on the news. But these occupational illnesses and fatalities are there, and they are even more prevalent. So what we're talking about today and preventing exposures to those occupational illnesses really will help prevent your workers from developing potential injuries or illnesses. There are, again, two hygiene campaigns. The first is the WHMIS training based on the amended hazardous products regulation, which really is enforcement of regulation 860. The second is the worker exposures to chemical agents in the workplace, which is really enforcement of the regulation 833. Phase one is really the education and outreach phase from the ministry, and they started that back in April of 2024, and that continues to run throughout this full year as well. Phase two is their enforcement phase, and that actually started back in July of 2024. And it will run until the end of their fiscal year, which is March 31st, 2026. So during this time, the MLITSD inspectors will conduct proactive inspections of workplaces in any sector where workers may be exposed to the hazardous chemical agents and the regulations apply at their workplace. So I will just start by discussing the WHMIS campaign as described on the ministry's website. Employers have a duty under Regulation 860 to provide workers with information on hazardous products that they may be exposed to in the workplace. So information is delivered through labels on the containers of the hazardous products, safety data sheets, and of course, worker education programs. Changes in information on the labels and SDSs will require employers to ensure that their workers receive WHMIS training that incorporates these changes. So the rationale for their campaign. It was the Federal Hazardous Products Regulations that requires suppliers of hazardous products to provide SDSs and ensure that the containers of those products are properly labeled. So it was the HPR that was amended in December of 2022 to include changes in hazard classifications and information elements in the SDSs. There is a 3-year transition period ending December of this year, 2025, for suppliers to comply. So during which time, workplaces will begin to receive the updated SDSs and labels for their hazardous products. So once employers receive those updated SDSs, this will require retraining of workers on WHMIS so that they understand the changes in the SDSs and the labels. So it's important to be looking at your SDSs and be aware if you start getting, and perhaps many of you have, these updated labels and SDSs. So the MLITSD hygiene inspectors will again be out there conducting proactive inspections to ensure compliance with the WHMIS regulation in all workplaces where this regulation applies. So more specifically, the inspector will determine if retraining on WHMIS will be required, depending on whether the hazardous products in the workplace have labels and SDSs that are now compliant with the amended hazardous products regulations. And this really will ensure that workers understand the hazards associated with the products that they work with and that they take the necessary measures and procedures to prevent injuries and illnesses when handling those hazardous chemicals and prevent those exposures. So to clarify who enforces WHMIS legislation in Ontario, it actually starts at the federal level with Health Canada and with, again, the Hazardous Products Act and the Hazardous Products Regulations. The Hazardous Product Act requires suppliers of hazardous products to communicate the hazards associated with their products via product labels and SDSs as a condition of sale and importation for workplace use. And then it's the HPR, which specifies the criteria for classifying the hazards posed by those chemical products and requirements for product labels and SDSs. Health Canada, they delegated enforcement to the provinces and territories. So in Ontario, this has fallen on the MLI-TSD, hygiene consultants or inspectors. So they are also the hazardous products regulations inspectors as well. So what to expect during an inspection? If you have an MLI-TSD inspector come to your workplace, their job is really to enforce the Occupational Health and Safety Act and its regulations based on the facts at the time of their inspection. So the inspector has the right to enter and be granted access to all areas of your workplace. So you definitely want to be friendly and inviting and let them in your workplace for sure. They would be able to provide proof of who they are, but definitely allow them in your workplace when they arrive. So they will definitely introduce themselves, explain the reason for their visit, and ask to have both a worker and a management representative from the company accompany them during the inspection. So that might be one of their first questions is, do you have a health and safety rep or a JHSC? And asking a worker rep also attend the inspection along with an employer representative. And the inspector will likely conduct both an administrative review and a physical inspection of the workplace. So what I mean by administrative review is that they may ask to look at some sort of documentation or your reports, policies, or procedures. For example, the first campaign on WHMIS, they definitely would be asking to review your SDSs, right? To determine if they've been updated. And if so, they automatically require updated WHMIS training. So they would likely be asking you for proof of your WHMIS training. Have you done it recently? You know, show me the sign-in sheets, show me your documentation that now you can prove that everyone has been trained on the updated information. For the second campaign, Regulation 833, they may be asking for documents like a previous air or chemical exposure assessment. If you have that report to determine if it's still relevant and if workers are being overexposed or underexposed to those occupational exposure limits for the hazardous chemicals. For physical inspections, that really includes actually physically walking around the workplace with you and looking for evidence of possible overexposures. Such as very dusty environments, perhaps your local exhaust ventilation system looks in poor condition, it's not being well maintained. If they notice respiratory protection is being worn, is it being worn properly? If it's tight fitting, you know, people are have shaved, so there's no interference with that seal. And they likely will also talk to your workers just to get a sense if they really truly understand what hazardous chemicals they're exposed to. Also, they might be asking if they understand what are the potential health effects of those hazardous chemicals and how the worker is supposed to keep themselves protected from exposure. So you might get some very detailed questions. And again, depending on the inspector, but that in general is what I've been told the inspectors are looking for. So if they do find any contraventions, they could lay in an order, or an order would be issued. So the inspector definitely would explain to you any of the contraventions and likely refer you to a workplace health and safety association for assistance to comply with those orders. So WSPS is one of the health and safety associations you might be referred to, and Gord and I have lots of experience, as well as our other hygienists across Ontario, that can help you with any of these orders. They can also issue a stop work order, and that is immediate, that they feel is an immediate threat to the worker's health and safety. So they do have the power to stop your work, and you have to do it. You have to shut everything down until you comply, or they are then feeling comfortable that the worker's health and safety is no longer in threat. But they definitely will provide a field visit report outlining all the details of the visit, including which orders, and will quote the regulations or the act of what's being contravened. So you'll have all that information, and you would of course share that with your JHSC and work to, fix all of those orders as soon as possible and let them know when those are completed. So changes to the hazardous products regulation. As mentioned, it was back in December of 2022 that the HPR was amended. So this three-year transition period for suppliers to really update their SDSs. So technically they have till almost the end of the year to be getting those SDSs, but you likely are getting or have received a lot of the SDSs updated already if the suppliers, are on top of it. But if you are looking for more detailed information, there's absolutely more information online if you're looking for those details. And just to highlight quickly for you some key changes to that hazardous product regulations and how they are classifying some of those hazardous chemicals a little bit different. So just outlining some of those things here on the slide for you. But again, the suppliers, they really need to understand this in detail and make those changes accordingly on their SDSs. And just maybe to end off, to point out the last bullet here for you, suppliers are required to provide, obtain, or prepare a written document to include the changes to the SDS and or labels that are required as a result of the significant new data and the date on which the significant new data became available. So if you are struggling with any of your SDSs, you're not getting them, or they seem incomplete, the best thing is always reach out to your supplier first and ask for them for the most recent SDS. And if you're still not getting good documents, or they're really not in compliance, I've also been told by the ministry that you can reach out to the Ministry of Labor, so an MLITSD, and again, that's their job to enforce the HPR. So they can then step in if needed to connect with the supplier and ensure that they are following the rules and are complying with these changes. So how do you know that you have an updated SDS? A quick way to see if your SDS is now in compliance with the new requirements is to look in Section 9, Physical and Chemical Properties section. And we've highlighted here the R, particle characteristics. This is a new requirement that is listed and required now in SDSs. So if you see that this is now in your SDSs, when you look at them, you know it is updated, and then automatically you should be doing your updated WHMIS training on the specifics of this chemical and the hazards that they impose. So you can see that the particle characteristics, you may have information there, or you may even have not applicable or no data available, you can see there. And that sort of makes sense because particle characteristics, most often that's going to be for solids, so hazardous chemicals that are in solid form, whereas liquids or gases likely won't have information for this in their SDS. So another poll question. Has anyone noticed an updated SDS at their workplace yet? Yes, no, or not sure. Oh, we'll give everyone some time to answer. So, okay, so we're almost a third so far. A third of the people have noticed, another third have not, and another third not sure. So that's okay. Thank you for participating in this poll. Great activity. If you're not sure, that's okay. This is perhaps something that you could put on your to-do list, is to check out your SDSs, your inventory, and be looking to see if you've got those updated or not. So again, suppliers technically have until the end of the year to get those to you, but most likely you're starting to see those come in now. So now I'd like to provide a quick overview of the relevant provincial legislation, starting with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And then we will look at Regulation 860, and Gord will get into the details around the sections of Regulation 833. So are you complying with the general duties outlined in the Occupational Health and Safety Act? And I think this is likely very familiar for all of you if you've had any health and safety training. But essentially, employers have the most responsibilities, right? Several duties outlined in Section 25 and 26 of the Act. So just briefly, a reminder that employers must take every precaution reasonable in the circumstances for the protection of a worker. And this really is an all-encompassing duty, which includes protection from hazardous chemicals if they're in your workplace. Right? They must ensure proper equipment is provided and maintained in good condition, such as local exhaust ventilation if it's being used to minimize chemical exposures. They must also provide information and instruction to a worker regarding any hazard in the workplace, including the handling, safe handling, storage, use, disposal, and transport of hazardous chemicals. So that's written right in the Act as well. In addition, if an employer is advised by a worker or on behalf of a worker that they have an occupational illness, or if a WSIB claim has been filed, the employer needs to report it to the MLITSD within 4 days of becoming aware. And this can be done directly online. The employer also would need to report that to the JHSC or health and safety rep or union if applicable. And of course, supervisors have duties as well. They often are the pair of hands for the employer. So they also need to take every precaution reasonable in the circumstance for the protection of a worker. They have to advise workers of the hazards on the job and train them how to work safely. And an important part of their job is to enforce those company rules and to ensure that workers are working safely and using the proper PPE when necessary, as they've been trained, right? Such as protective gloves. Are they wearing the right kind of gloves? Do they need the respirator? Are they continuing to wear the respirators and doing the proper fit testing and checks every time they put them on? And then lastly, workers have duties as well. Of course, in Section 28, workers need to follow the safe procedures that they've been trained on and to report any health and safety concerns to their supervisors, or if they have suffered an illness or an injury at work, right? So the supervisor and employers really need that feedback loop from the workers if they have concerns, right? They can't fix something that they don't know is a problem. So really encouraging your workers internally, that's part of the training that you want to communicate with them, that you're open to their suggestions, any of their concerns, because they want to make sure that you continue to be able to work safely. And then to highlight the powers and duties of the health and safety representative, well, they can be found in all of Section 8. And then Section 9 is where you'll find most of the information regarding the JHSC responsibilities and powers. And when you take the certification training, Part 1 and Part 2, you learn all about these. But of particular interest for these two campaigns, a worker representative from the JHSC is always welcome and invited to be present at the beginning of any testing, such as an air or chemical exposure assessment that an occupational hygienist would perform to determine the level of the hazardous chemicals workers may be exposed to. And it's always a great idea to consult with the JHSC or your worker rep when discussing that sampling strategy, and they have the opportunity to ask any questions and provide their input. And of course, they also can obtain information from the employer that they have regarding hazardous materials. So in the Act, under Section 42, it's regarding instruction and training. So here is where it says the employer shall ensure that a worker exposed or likely to be exposed to a hazardous material receives instruction and training. So here we're really talking about WHMIS training, okay? And that instruction and training shall be developed and implemented by the employer in consultation with the JHSC and health and safety rep. So really the employer should be connecting with them and reviewing their WHMIS program, and it should be done at least annually. So you can see it says right in the Act that the employer shall review in consultation with the committee or rep the training and instruction provided to a worker and the worker's familiarity at least annually, and even more annually if the employer, on the advice of the committee or rep, determines it's necessary, or there is a change in circumstance that may affect the health and safety of a worker. So just to clarify here, it is not saying you must do WHMIS training every year. That's a best practice, and I've heard the ministry say that absolutely you can do WHMIS training annually. I know a lot of workplaces do it. It is a great best practice if you're keeping the information top of mind of workers on how to work safely. But it's not, I couldn't point somewhere in the legislation that says you must do training annually. What this is saying is that you must do annually a review of that training provided and the worker's familiarity. So you could do this by doing quizzes, at the end of your training, and see if people are really familiar. So you could do training and do the quizzes, and now people are really remembering what you want them to remember. Or if you feel, nothing has changed, everybody's doing everything what they're supposed to do, but I know that I am supposed to annually check in with their familiarity with the training. So maybe I'm just going to give a quiz to everybody that asks those really important questions that I want to make sure they know, so they know how to work safely. And I can just give a quiz, and if I see everybody, did fantastic on it, I am now feeling very comfortable that they know what they need to do. But if those quizzes come back, and everybody is doing terrible, that is a good indicator that you need to do better training, perhaps even look at your procedures. Are they up to date? Are people able to follow them? Or, what's going wrong? Like, why aren't people still aware of what they need to do? So now switching to the highlights of the WHMIS regulations. So by law, everyone has the right to know about workplace health and safety hazards, right? We all know that. That's one of our main rights. And that includes hazardous materials. So knowing what they are and how to protect yourself when you work with them. So with this right comes responsibilities. So employers, supervisors, workers, and suppliers all have very important duties, which we will highlight right now. So the employer has the most responsibility, really. They need to actually develop an SDS for any hazardous products that they produce internally. and ensure all containers that enter the workplace are labeled properly with a supplier label, and ensure workplace labels are applied when necessary, right? Every container must have a label. Update those labels and SDSs when significant new data becomes available, and ensure that SDSs are always available and accessible to all workers, right? So that's super important. The ministry likely will be asking, how will you workers access them? So they want to see that they can get them at any time. It could be paper, it could be online, but they really want to see that, it's not locked behind a door, people can access it. And if it is online, everyone can actually get to that and be able to access it. Now, section 6 and 7, I would say, are really the main players here in the WHMIS regulation in terms of what's expected in your training program. So it's highlighted here. The employer shall ensure that every worker who works with or who may be exposed to in the course of his or her work to a hazardous product is instructed in A, the contents required on labels, and the purpose and significance of that information. And then similarly, contents required on SDSs and the purpose and significance of that information. So I would say that A and B are usually generally done very well. But workplaces I go into, when you ask if they've done WHMIS training, lots of people automatically say, oh yes, we've done that. And when I ask a bit more detail, they'll say they had the hour they have the hour e-learning that everybody goes through on orientation, which is fabulous. That is excellent. But that really is just generic information, right? It's important. People are going to learn about the labels, what's required on labels, how to read them. Same with SDSs, what all the information is in an SDS. What are those symbols? The flame means flammable. That information is really excellent. But you really are not done. What is even more important in my mind is the rest from C to F, what is required in the legislation, right? So your instruction is also supposed to include procedures for the safe use, storage, handling, and disposal of the hazardous product, right? So everyone here, I want you to think, and if you have, fantastic. And if you haven't, that's okay. We're all here to learn and, continuous improvement. But do you actually have procedures specific to your workplace for employees, workers to actually be able to use, store, handle, dispose of those hazardous products that they are handling in your workplace? So similar, do you have those procedures and have people been trained on those hazardous products, if it's even if it's just being contained or transferred, procedures to follow if there's fugitive emissions that are coming off processes, or even procedures if an emergency were to occur with that hazardous product, right? Is there a small spill? How do people clean it up? Is it a big spill and now, is there something different we need to do? Do we all just evacuate, or do we have the resource and a good plan to be able to clean up a larger spill, right? So all of those details need to be thought about and a procedure written specific to your workplace, and then the training of your workers so everyone understands how they can protect themselves in their workplace. And unfortunately, a lot of people haven't gone to this detail, or maybe they just can't prove it, right? There's no written procedure, or it may have just been a verbal training and there's been some job shadowing. But we really want to tighten this up, and it's always great to actually write a procedure so it's consistent, that when you do the training, everybody is learning the same thing. And you're not relying on your, one key worker that knows everything, right? What if they win the lottery and leave the next day, right? You don't want to be in that position that all that good information is only with one person. Right. So if the ministry is in and they're asking about your WHMIS training and it's not, you're not in compliance, this is the sections that they will likely write an order for you. So again, you want to make sure absolutely keep up that generic training that you're doing, but check in and make sure you're doing really good workplace specific task-based procedures training on those hazardous products. And just a reminder, make sure you review this WHMIS program, your training procedures program on an annual basis with your JHSE or your health and safety rep, and definitely document that review in your minutes. Again, you want to be able to prove that you've done these things. And if you haven't written it down, it's hard to prove it, right? So always write it down. Make sure when you do your training, you've got your sign-in sheet, the date, everybody's name is there. So if they want to double check if the trainings happen, and in your training record, absolutely include what you did in the training. What information did you review? Were you observing people actually doing that safe work practice? So that is very important to document all those details. So just to be super clear, employers that receive hazardous products with labels and SDSs that are compliant with the amended HPR are responsible to ensure their workers receive chemical-specific WHMIS training, regardless of the chemical being new or not to the workplace. So you could be expected to go back and do updated training, even on chemicals that you've had in the past. Right. So how do you go about doing good workplace specific training? Really very important is that, again, you are going to develop these procedures and then train on the procedures for safe use, storage, handling, and disposal of those products. So you want to have all those details written down in a procedure. Right. And many of you have probably heard of the phrase, I heard, and I thought it was really quite good to remember for training people, that first teach me, then show me, then watch me. So teach me would be the first step, right? You've written the procedure and now tell me about it. Show me the safe operating procedure. Tell me everything I need to know. You're teaching me, the worker. Then show me. So I'm actually going to have someone who is doing and knows that safe work procedure very well. Someone's going to demonstrate it for them. Could be the supervisor, could be another worker, right? But now the worker is going to see it so they can see the details, because I think we all learn by doing, right? That's sort of the learning is in the doing. So we watch them and then we do it. So teach me, show me, watch me. So observing the worker is the last step, right? Watch them do that procedure. So you now feel confident that they learned what you wanted them to learn. They know all those details about the equipment, how to put on the ventilation. How do I know that ventilation is really working? Do I have the right PPE on? Do I know how to take off those gloves without getting the chemicals all over my skin? Right? All of those details are extremely important. Right? You may need to repeat that job shadowing process until the worker get it right. Right? We all, again, learn best by doing. And so just keep doing that until the worker and the supervisor now feel confident that they've got it. They know what they're doing. They know how to protect themselves. Right. And again, as a supervisor, you can sleep well at night because you've seen them. You've seen them do it safely. And then document that. So don't forget, again, write it down, the date, the time, the person, everything you trained on them, have that information available, and that you observe them doing this procedure correctly, on what date. So that really is excellent due diligence on the part of the supervisor and employer, right? You're doing everything you can that's reasonable to protect that worker and to make sure they know how to work safely. And something to think about, some answers, these could be some quiz questions that you could put in a quiz. So you want workers to know what hazardous chemicals they are exposed to. What's the name of them? What are the main hazards of those chemicals? right? Is it going to potentially explode? Is it flammable? Is it an oxidizer? Make sure I don't put it beside a flammable. What are the key things they need to know? And also, what are the potential health effects, right? Depending on the chemical, it could, be a variety of things. Cancer, respiratory problems, you'll find all of that information on your SDSs. So they are so important to have updated SDSs and really build those procedures and using the information in your SDS. Workers absolutely need to know how they protect themselves from potential exposure, right? So even just asking that, you could put that in a quiz, but you will have observed them doing it, right? So they know the right type of glove, they know the right type of respirator, when to change the cartridges, all of those important details. And absolutely, do they know what to do in the event of an emergency, right? If I spill this, where's the spill kit? What do I use to clean it up? If it's flammable, am I using a non-sparking shovel, right? I don't want to create a spark. Do I need a neutralizer? I don't know, right? Have all of these things prepared, and they do know it's in a procedure. They know where the spill kit is, and they know what to do and how to dispose of it after. And again, definitely encourage reporting. So make sure that all your workers know during that training that you need to know if they have any concerns, right? So a list of these things you could use during the training. So really enforcing that you want to hear from them if anything is going wrong or if they've had an exposure. So those are some things to think about when you're doing your WHMIS training. Moving on to supervisors' duties. Again, they have to usually are the ones providing the training and education on those safe procedures. And then, of course, so important to enforce those procedures, right? It's one thing to learn it and do it once in the training, and it's another thing to actually consistently do it the same way every time. So that's a huge job. That's a huge part of the supervisor's role, is checking in with people and ensuring that they are working safely. And if they're not, you want to talk to them. Ask them what's going on today. Why are you behaving this way today? It could be a training issue, but it might be something very different. Like, they don't have the equipment, it's not available to them for some reason, right? They've run out of stock, or, they could be many reasons why people are not following a safe procedure. So you want to understand it and fix the problem of what's causing them to behave that way. Okay. Workers absolutely have very important responsibilities. Well, they of course have to attend the training and then be able to actually put it into use, actually follows those safe procedures they've learned, wear and care for all their PPE properly as they've been instructed, and of course report any concerns to their supervisor. And supplier duties to end off. They have to ensure the supplier label is attached to the actual container, make sure they have the SDS is available, provided to the workplaces, and it's kept up to date. They are available in French and English, and provide a copy, of course, to the purchaser. So just to touch on this, the evaluation step I mentioned earlier. Again, don't forget your employer must review in consultation with the committee the actual WHMIS training, right? At least annually. So some ideas of what that might look like in your review is even just simply starting with your SDSs. Do you have an updated inventory? Like, do you really know what's in your workplace? And do we have an SDS for it, right? So walking around your workplace and making sure there's no mysterious chemical in your workplace, right? Is everything labeled? Do we have chemicals in here that are not supposed to be in here? And then that could lead to what, do we have a good program here and rules that people know? You can't just bring any chemical into the workplace, right? And have an approval process. So we can help you with that if you're looking for help with those procedures as well, right? But you're making sure you've got updated SDSs. Document that review, and are they still accessible? You could be talking to your workers. Do they know how to access them? And you're checking your WHMIS training logs, right? Have we actually trained everyone? We've had new people join. Did they get the training when they were supposed to? So just checking in and evaluating your program. These are just a few suggestions on how to do that. Some ideas of what would trigger WHMIS retraining, right? Absolutely. If you get a new product in, you want to review that SDS, make sure you have a good safe procedure, and then provide all of those details to the worker. So you don't wait for a year to pass by. You do that right away, of course, as soon as you have that new product. If the SDS has been updated, like we talked earlier, so if you're getting those new SDSs, updated SDSs that are now compliant with HPR, you want to do training right away. Maybe you have no proof of your workplace specific training. You can't find those training records, right? You would need to be able to prove that you've done it. Maybe you've just changed your safe procedures. Maybe there's just lack of worker knowledge. Maybe they don't use that chemical very often, so it's not top of mind. Maybe they do need a refresher. And again, just to say, annual retraining or verification of the knowledge is, the annual retraining is a great best practice, which can help demonstrate that the employer is taking every precaution reasonable. Okay, so to end off this segment, I'll end it with a chat question. What hazardous products pose a risk to workers' health or in safety in your workplace? And you can type those right in the chat. So any hazardous products that come to mind in your workplace. So we have an idea of what you're dealing with. Okay, dry ice, solvents, very common. Isocyanates, and that's even a designated substance. So you have an extra regulation to know about for any designated substances. Methyl ketone, that's a good one. I was just doing an assessment for recently. So many different solvents out there. Pesticides, right? Alcohol, absolutely. Disinfectant, sanitizing, cleaning, absolutely, so many things. Lead, another one. Oh, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to pass it over to Gord, and he'll launch into Regulation 833.
All right, thank you so much for that, Tony. That was very insightful. But now for the second half of this presentation, we're going to talk about the Ontario Regulation 833, which deals with worker exposures to chemical agents in the workplace and the proper control measures that would be implemented. As you can probably understand, there's a wide variety of campaigns that the Ministry of the MLITSD is implementing this year, but we've kind of tried to loop these two in. As we kind of progress through this, you'll definitely see a little bit of similarities between the two, so we thought providing this information at the same time is probably the best case scenario. So as Tony mentioned, occupational diseases are the leading cause of worker death in Ontario. So any opportunity that we have to control them is obviously going to be at the main focus of the MLITSD. So, oh, sorry, I'm just a little bit, there we go. So primarily at the end of this, what the Ministry of, or the MLITSD is focused on is trying to get any workers below any exposure to hazardous substances that exceed the occupational exposure limits. And that's kind of a big difference between what we previously talked about with Regulation 860, the WHMIS regulation. 833 is, this one really looks at the concentrations of or how your workers are going to be exposed to various different chemicals. You think of an instance where there might be a particularly hazardous chemical, but you're going to be exposed to for a relatively short period of time, something task-based, something that's, done with some periodicity that's quite long, as opposed to potentially a less noxious chemical, but are going to be exposed to for many hours over the course of a week. How we look at those and how we control those particular hazards associated with those is going to be very depending on the different chemicals and the different situations that they're working with. So very similarly, with what the ministry inspector will likely be going to be do, again, just to kind of reiterate something that Tony mentioned, is an inspector that comes in and is going to be looking at various aspects of this and trying to ensure compliance, we don't actually know what they do and what they look like. We don't have any additional knowledge that you may not have. We're not in any way, shape, or form. We don't have any inside track on what they're looking at, but we've conversed with enough companies that have these type of orders that we kind of have this idea of what they're going to be looking at and some of the things that they focus on. So that's what we're trying to disseminate to you today, so that you can be best prepared if an inspector comes in. We can't guarantee that everything in this presentation is going to be what they're looking for, but we're trying to put you in the best opportunities for success. So what the inspector will be looking for, again, they'll likely be doing both an administrative and physical inspection of their workplace, looking at the work processes. What are you doing? What chemicals are you using? How are they implemented at your workplace? How do you use any potentially hazardous chemicals? And what's their exposure like? Looking at work practices, seeing how your workers deal with these chemicals. Is it something that they load into a machine, the machine uses it, and then at the end, a product is spit out? Or are they, dealing with it in such a way that an inhalation hazard or absorption hazard by something, you need gloves on, you need respirators on, these are going to be important things that they're going to be looking at, and something that they might be focusing on. Evaluating control measures. If there's going to be a potential hazardous concern, how are you controlling that? How are you ensuring that your workers are safe? And if applicable, if you have any exposure data, and this is definitely something that we're going to be talking about in this presentation, is what have you done based off of any exposure data that you have. Based off of this information, there may or may not be a request or a requirement based off of the orders that are given for you to do any potential air sampling to ensure that either your control measures you have are working, or if control measures need to be implemented. All right, so how can you be ready? This is a little bit where our overlap goes on, because the first thing, information is key. If you don't know the hazards that are in your workplace, the first thing, inspectors, you're probably not going to be in a good situation if an inspector comes in. So gain all the information, all chemical or biological hazards in your facility. Excellent thing to do. Look at your SDSs. Figure out what the chemicals are and if any of them are hazardous. Inform your workers on what hazards there are, oftentimes done with both the generic and the workplace specific WHMIS training. So if you've done everything that Tony talked about in the first half, you're almost all the way there, ensuring that your workers are going to be both knowledgeable about the hazards that they have. But the second half, and this is what the 833 regulation really focuses on, is how can we make sure, if there is any hazardous chemicals, that the workers are safe. So we highly recommend just doing workplace assessments, most likely going to be done via walkthroughs. If you have good knowledge of how the chemicals are being used at your facilities, and what the workers are doing and how they interact with them, you're well versed on this, but oftentimes you need to be knowledgeable because procedures change, and how potential chemicals might change, or how they use them might change over time. So periodic walkthroughs are heavily encouraged, something that should be done by both management and JHSC combined, and if applicable, possible exposure monitoring. If you, for whatever reason, determine that this, or you receive some exposure monitoring that is, in some way, shape, or form, an exceedance of the legislation, institute appropriate control measures. Doesn't necessarily have to be beyond any occupational exposure limits. If you want to be proactive and institute control measures, we heavily encourage that. But that's only going to be done if necessary. And then again, periodic reviews. Look at this again. It's not good enough to do it once. Do it again in a year, and a year, and a year. Always be looking, always be assessing. It's a very cyclical process. And that's what we're, sorry, this would be the next slide, but so question for you, and a poll will become momentarily. Does your organization currently have a way to assess the risk level of chemicals in your workplace, accounting for the likelihood, frequency, and severity of the hazard? So I'll give a second for some numbers to come in, but as we see right now, and this is something that, as a health and safety organization, coming with WSPS, we love to see that the answers are overwhelmingly coming in yes. If you've got a way to look at these chemicals, that makes our not our lives easiest, but we have good conversations talking with these individuals, and a big part of this upcoming presentation is going to be addressing those. So, all right. So as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a cyclical process. What we normally like to talk about is something called the RACE model. You have to recognize, assess, control, and then evaluate your control measures that you have done. Sorry. So just to kind of kick it off. We're going, oh, sorry. There we go. The RACE model. Let's talk about to recognize. So one of the things, first thing that you should do is identify your potential hazards at your workplace. This is most often done, as we said, going to be done through a walk. And I'm not going to belabor this too much. It's going to be oftentimes done in concurrence with your WHMIS training, which is something Tony has talked about extensively. But you want to collect and process any information, a walkthrough survey of the workplace. This is by no way, shape, or form going to be an exhaustive solution to it. And really what the purpose of the walkthrough that we try to recommend to you is trying to identify where you need to put in more effort. You should be looking at your organization holistically, and then based off of the information that you gather through these walkthroughs is where you're going to be identifying where more work needs to be done. So this should be like I said, holistic. As soon as a chemical or material enters your facility, you need to be tracking it. You need to be knowing who's dealing with it and what capacity that they're dealing with it. Could be as simple as we receive something in a sealed container and we do not open it until a certain process. But are you sure? Are you aware of that? Has anything ever, anybody ever circumvent these processes? All the way down to either product will leave your facility either as a product that you've created as part of the manufacturing process or disposed of in some way, shape, or form. Every step along that way, you should be looking at and identifying where potential hazards and exposures to your workers may take place. So things that you should be looking at. Process flow. How are chemicals being stored, handled, disposed? Who's interacting with? How are they interacting with it? Through your SDS, you should be identifying which chemicals you should be looking at more or less likely, because you're seeing what is hazardous, what is not hazardous, and what is going to be used the most. We're looking at things that you a less noxious or less dangerous chemical that is used much frequently. There should be a certain amount of calculus and discretion used as opposed to a very hazardous chemical used less frequently. How are you looking at these is something for your discussions to be made. And again, if you ever any need, please reach out to WSPS. But these are some of the things that you should be thinking of. Just because the SDS says that this is hazardous versus not hazardous, you need to be looking at the length of time, how often somebody is using something, to really guide these discussions that you should be having based off of what is hazardous or not hazardous at your facility. Additional things that you should be looking at is how many workers are going to be exposed. By no means do we want to minimize if one worker is going to be exposed to a chemical, but if you have a certain amount of chemical that's going to be exposed to large groups of individuals, also looking at how they are interacting, is it in a large open area? Or in a confined space, poor ventilation, poor control measures should be looked at as well. So with that said, this is going to be kind of a gimme question. We'll open up the poll again, but who do you think should be involved in this process? I'll just quickly go through this, but one of the things that we kind of want to communicate to you is, this is something that we often see the initiative that many health and safety managers or professionals around various workplaces will do, but you don't have all the information to it yourself, right? Talk to your maintenance team. Where is dust accumulating? Where does extra focus need to be done when cleaning or maintaining things? Talk to your workers. Are you using the chemicals in the same ways that we intended you to use? Are you talking to any contractors that may be using different chemicals in different ways that do not receive this kind of training that you have provided to your workers? All of this information needs to be done for you to get this really good look at a walkthrough. Last thing that we want to see is when people do these walkthroughs, they do it from the comfort of their office and don't have the knowledge of actually how chemicals are being used in their facilities. And this is kind of what we want you to break those habits and start reaching out, seeing how chemicals and potentially hazardous materials are being used in your facilities. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, so information to collection. Should we already have looked at your WS or your SDSs, sorry. And we just want to draw your attention to two things while you're looking at these SDSs, Section 3s and Section 15s. Section 3 will tell you specifically all the constituent chemicals that are within the product that you're using. Oftentimes we don't receive something that is 100% of any particular chemical. It's a mixture for whatever particular application that you're using. So it'll tell you what the percentage of each chemical is in there. Additionally, in section 15, there'll either be something, we've seen it either looked at regulatory information or exposure limits, depending on what the SDS specifically is. But what it tells you is there is what the occupational exposure limits, i.e. if it's hazardous or not, and their particular legislative equivalent in various jurisdictions. This is by all means, and this is a conversation that we often have is, not every SDS was designed with Ontario in mind. Different jurisdictions, different federal jurisdictions, different provincial jurisdictions may be identified on this, and it might not be Ontario. So just because Ontario may or may not be indicated on your SDSs does not mean it is or is not have a regulatory exposure limit based on in Ontario. However, this is an excellent first step to do, and we'll talk about what to do next when we're looking at specifically the chemicals that are in it. One other point to mention about this is, and for whatever reason, chemists like to call things different names, and depending on the SDS that you're dealing with, they might be called something else. An example on the screen right now is isopropyl alcohol. Depending on the SDS you might be dealing with, it might be called 2-propanol. Those two things are chemically identical, but might have a different name. The one thing that doesn't change that is required to be included on your SDSs is what they call the CAS number. And all the CAS number is just a identifier, a numerical identifier that indicates what each chemical is. Both isopropyl alcohol or 2-propanol have the exact same CAS number. So when you're looking up regulatory exposure limits, we try to encourage you to use the CAS number rather than the physical name, or the name of the chemical on the SDS, because that might change things a little bit depending on what you're looking at, because the regulatory table might use one name and your SDS might use another. CASs never change. So you're going to be doing a walkthrough. One of the things that you should be looking at frequently is where is there contamination? If you see any areas that are unclean, that is probably the likelihood exposure is most likely in those areas. If you see spills, if you see dusts on surfaces, these are in things that indicate that your workers are using these chemicals at a higher frequency in these areas. The cleanest area of your facility is most likely going to be pretty safe, while the corner of the facility that has got just dusts from sanding, grinding, those kind of processes is a good indicator that there may be adverse exposures at that location. Yeah, so look for where there's dust on clothing. I don't want to say your dirtiest worker, but any individual that's accumulating dust should be something that you're on their clothes, should be something you're investigating. Additionally, evidence of vapors or fumes, a good thing about that is any areas that might have a noxious odor by no means is something that smells and necessarily indicative of a hazardous environment, but it's something, again, we're just trying to identify areas of your facility that you should probably be focusing on, things that you should be looking for, right? Not that there's anything hazardous here, but you're trying to put a little, idea in the back of your head. We should look further into this area. Storage facilities, methods of substance storage. Do you store them in open or sealed containers? Obviously, sealed containers are going to be a little bit reduce the exposure likelihood because there's no way for that chemical to be exposed to the individuals. Are they protected from damage? I saw somebody or they were talking earlier about some of the chemicals at the end of Tony's presentation that, what is the chemicals that yours? And somebody mentioned dry ice. Dry ice is something that when it sublimates, it can disperse oxygen in the environment. Are these kind of things controlled for? Is it a well-ventilated area, a poorly vented area with a lot of dry ice? You could be going in and there's not enough oxygen for you to functionally breathe. And therefore there's hazards associated with that. Dispensing procedures, how is the substance, let's say it's a powder that you're pouring from a bag into some form of machine, while you pour that bag of powder, is there a giant plume that potentially the worker might be introducing their breathing zone into? Do you have control measures to prevent these powders from exposing your workers? Or is it an open area that you're going to see a lot of accumulation of dust kind of in those corners? And these are kind of the things you should be looking at. If it's a liquid, are you seeing, is there proper ways to control, any spills that might occur? Is it a collecting on the floor because, potentially a funnel might not be used or is used improperly? These kind of things are the things you should be looking for during your walkthrough procedures. Hygiene facilities, eating practices, washing facilities. One of the things that we hate to see is having individuals keeping their lunch at their workspace. Chemicals can deposit onto, say accidentally they open up their lunch or they're eating at their workplace. They're much more likely to be going to be exposed to chemicals via ingestion if chemicals are allowed to deposit on their food that they're going to be eating soon. So highly encourage, dedicated lunchrooms that are used by your workers. Cleaning procedures, something along the lines of sweeping. Sweeping is probably one of the things that aerosolizes dusts probably the easiest, and people don't often think about it. If you're sweeping up things and you get that giant plume of dust that's coming off of something, this is something that you should be focused on because this is another chance for exposure. Similarly, compressed air. Oftentimes, workplaces use compressed air for their tools, for machinery that they're required to use. Oftentimes, workers will use the compressed air to blow off all of the dust off of their workplace and immediately throwing in the air. And the likelihood of your workers being exposed to it at that point, much, much higher. Sorry. Walkthroughs. So finally for this is looking at your control measures. Oftentimes the ventilation system's gonna be the first thing we're gonna be looking at. Do you have maintenance logs on your do you routinely change out the filters? Is the air outlets and inlets going to be clean, or are they accumulating dust? These kind of things, like if a ventilation system is a control measure that you have implemented, feather in your cap for that, but you need to make sure that it's working efficiently all the way through. All right, so the purpose of this is you've identified some potential hazards, and hopefully, there we go. You've identified some areas that you want to look a little bit more in depth at, and this is where we come to the assess portion of the RACE model. Oftentimes what this will look like is you're going to have a third-party WSPS, both myself and Tony provide this type of service, is we trying to figure out, is there a hazard? You've identified certain areas that you want to look at further, and we come in and we answer that question for you. What is the actual exposure of your workers while they're doing their jobs? We can look at the SDSs, and by no means do I want you to dismiss the SDSs, but those are best practices. We're looking at what is the reality on the ground at your facility at that time. Okay, there we go. So quick poll question, has your organization ever heard of a hygiene air exposure assessment for chemicals in your workplace? Is this something that you're familiar with, or are you hearing about this for the first time? I'll give you a second to answer that. Because one of the main things that we're looking at here is we're trying to disseminate this information, let you know kind of for this next portion of the presentation, we want to let you know what kind of questions should you be asking, what is the information you need to be either looking at while you do this internally, or if you reach out to a third-party contractor that is performing this, what are the kind of questions that you need to do. We want to give you the best information you possibly can. So in the previous section, we've identified the areas of your workplace we want to look at a little bit further. And the questions that you should be coming to, and something that you should have now is, who are you looking at to sample? Kind of that second point right there. Is the chemical of concern, or what are the tasks that we've identified? Is it a, full 8-hour shift, 40-hour work week that exposure is doing this? Or is this a short-term task-based sample, that we want to look at? Do they pick up or use a particular machine or chemical for a short period of time, or is something that they're going to be chronically exposed to for the duration of their shifts? Based off that information is what and how are we going to be sampling? Based off of that information, there may or may not be the monitoring strategy that you're going to be dealing with, or is this something that we want to look at for a personal sample? We also do things called area sampling, which, individuals aren't going to be exposed for long enough for the technology doesn't exist right now for these short period times, but we'll put an area sample in a time so we kind of have that increased collection time, so the laboratory will be able to provide us with good data. And another thing we need to be looking at is, okay, so we've identified these hazards. How many people are we looking at? You know, if you're dealing with something of 50, 60 individuals, you know, 1 or 2 samples to be representative of that group might not be good enough. However, if you've got a group of like, you know, 2 or 3 individuals, 1 sample might be good enough. So we want to get at both a representative look at who's going to be provided, you know, potentially this assessment. And additionally, you know, we want it to be representative of the group. So we want to have a large enough sample size that's looking at that. So how does this work? On the screen right now, you'll see one of our colleagues who's also a hygienist with WSPS, and she's modeling what the monitoring strategy would look like. Effectively, what it is what we want to do is we want to capture the air that your worker is breathing as best we can. Obviously, we're not capturing the physical air that your worker is going to be breathing because they need to breathe that air. But what we want to do is we want to put monitoring equipment in the breathing zone of the individual. And so what you kind of see here is there's either a cassette or what we call the DIS that's going to be collecting the air. It's connected through a hose over the back to this pump on normally connected to an individual's waist. What that will do is pump the air that's the individual is going to be breathing for the duration of their work shift or task that we're going to be looking at. So we send this to the lab and we get back numbers. What do we do with these numbers, and how do we figure out if your worker is safe and what control measures to implement? Well, handily enough, the Ontario government has published a list of every chemical that there is a regulatory limit of in Ontario. First thing that we should probably note is they're all available online, both available online and in your green books. However, this website currently is part of a migration project. We have no idea if the you know, URL is going to change, and if it is, to what. We do not have that kind of information, but if it ever moves, this is where it currently stands right now. If you want access to it, just Google OREG 833 and you'll have it online. Oftentimes what we want to do is provide you with the web-based, because the table in your Green Book, there's a large section in your Green Book, Ontario Regulation 833. It's going to have this table in it. It's not complete as far as the law in Ontario is. What the government of Ontario has done is they have a long list of chemicals that they've determined their particular exposure limit data that they require. Additionally, there's also a non-governmental agency called the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists that come up with their own individual information. So what you see, and Ontario has adopted that. One important thing to note is Ontario's adopted the 2017 version of the data published by the ACGIH. When they will update to a more current version, ACGIH publishes new data every single year. We don't know when they will update it from 2017, but at any point, these numbers might change with current information. So you see on the left here, Ontario table listing. If it says Ontario table, that's going to be in your Green Book. None does not. The agents are all listed alphabetically, both with their CAS number. So we try and encourage you to use the web base so you can search for CAS number, because of that thing that I mentioned earlier. Different chemicals have different names depending on talk to. It'll either list a TWA or a STEL sealing. TWA is chemicals that have long-term chronic effects, and STELs or sealings have things that have more irritant effects and are normally based more task-based is what we'd be looking at them for. There's a wide variety of indicated letters that I'm not going to belabor them at this point. If there's any chemical that is particularly draws your attention, please refer to either this table online or through your Green Book. Only other thing I'd like to note is there's something called the skin notation. You'll see it here at the very bottom. What that means is this, normally what we're looking at here is going to be inhalation hazards. Inhalation is the most likely one that we're going to be dealing with, because that is the most spongy tissues in your body, and absorption's so easy done there as opposed to through your skin or through ingestion. However, certain chemicals can be absorbed through the skin, and if it has a skin notation, goggles, gloves, eye shields, that kind of thing is essential while using it. All right, so time to weighted average, STELs and sealings. Time weighted averages, 40-hour work weeks is what we're trying to compare that standard to. STELs and sealings are more for task-based. only main thing I would like to draw your attention to on this slide is there is a list of 11 chemicals called designated substances. I saw somebody mention isocyanates in the chat earlier, and what they are is 11 chemicals that have unique legislative requirements in Ontario. So if you have any of these 11 at your facility, highly recommend you educating yourself on Ontario Regulation 490, which is the designated substances one, because there's different requirements for those as opposed to what I'm talking about today. All right, so you've done your assessments and you figured out there may need to be controls implemented. How do we do that, and what are we going to be looking for? Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I had a little technical difficulties for 2 seconds. Important to note, in Ontario, oftentimes we think of control measures as personal protective equipment. We think of as respirators, that kind of thing. As it stands right now in Ontario, we try to refer to something called the hierarchy of controls. And what this is, hopefully many health and safety individuals in the chat are viewing this right now are familiar with it, but it's effectively a cascading list of how we want control measures to be done. Ideally, the best case scenario, you identify a hazard, you get rid of it. If you don't need it for your policies, best way to keep your individuals safe, get rid of it out of your facility. We know they're safe then. It cascades all the way down through substitution, engineering, and awareness, all the way down to personal protective equipment. And the reason that personal protective equipment is at the bottom is because compliance is so difficult and so often is noticed erroneously. You'll see individual workers either become complacent or just outright ignorant of the control measures that are required for them. At this point, we would recommend, again, you referring to your SDSs, in Section 8, there'll be recommendations on either engineering or individual protection controls of these, if these are hazardous. With that said, in Ontario, you are legally required to educate your workers on any personal protective equipment you provide them. The first thing, it's not necessarily good enough for you just to give them a respirator. Kind of Tony mentioned this earlier, is they need to be both trained on the use of it, its limitations, and on the proper fit of the respirator. With respirators specifically, you are required to provide a fit test to them to make sure that you've given them something that can actually provide a seal. Things like, fall arrest harness, you need to be trained on the proper use of prior to going to working at heights. With that said, is if you are a organization that has provided respirators to your workers, you are required to provide a respiratory protection program. This effectively lays out in what instances are you required to wear a respirator and what level of respirator protection are you required to, the proper filters, the proper cartridges that are required for each individual task that a respirator has been identified for. I'm not going to belabor this too much, but I highly recommend you look at the CSA standard associated with respiratory protection if you are looking to develop it. Additionally, WSPS does help with development of respiratory protection programs. So your assessment's complete, but you're not finished. What you want to do is continue to evaluate. Looking at periodically, we try to encourage that people do this annually, although there's no legislative requirement of any periodicity for you to do. But of the new controls, you've improved the exposure levels. Should you have to do remonitoring? Are new hazards? Are you using new chemicals, new processes, new machines that have existed in your workplace? Additionally, has any changes you've done, are they content with the changes? Are your workers starting to not use the respirators or control programs that you've implemented because they're no longer, they're not that they're no longer encouraged to use them, but they're finding them burdensome in some way, shape, or form? Non-compliance is coming because of lack of comfort with things. Should you be looking at different control measures? Additionally, we try to always encourage you, these should be done in consultation with your JHSC or health and safety rep. So that kind of brings to an end. I hope that was pretty fast and furious of what we should be looking at when it comes to Regulation 833, but just as kind of a final conclusion, things that you need to do just with the two regulations, 833 and 860, WHMIS, Regulation 860, review your SDSs. You have until, not you have December, manufacturers have until December to provide you with the updated WHMIS regulations. Make sure that you're getting them. If not, again, contact Health Canada. They're going to be, they're responsible for ensuring manufacturers have them and are providing them to them. If you do have these SDSs, make sure your individuals are trained on them. You know, if you can get both your workplace engineer and WHMIS specific training check in the box done, excellent, good to go. Make sure that individuals are doing, and also try to log that. Have proof, have administrative ability to, you know, sign in sheets, that kind of idea, what they're looking at. For OREG 833, review your SDSs, specifically sections 3 and 8. And if you have any exposure, you know, figure out if you need to do any exposure assessments. And if you have controls been implemented that brings the exposure down below the exposure limits. Look at remonitoring periodically, because, you know, sample in time, if you do one exposure assessment, you know, certain things might have been happening on that day. It may have been higher or lower than an average day. What you want to kind of have is the most representative day as possible for that. Discuss your monitoring strategy with a qualified occupational hygienist. If you're ever reaching out to a third-party occupational hygienist, we recommend, or in Canada, there's 2 credentialing, either the CIH, with both Tony and I have, or what you called an ROH, a registered occupational hygienist, are for all intents and purposes considered equivalent in Ontario. All right, so we'll just provide you quickly with some resources that you probably are either going to be available with either WSPS or the ministry. So the first thing we'd like to draw your attention to is WSPS has recently come in, because as this Regulation 860 is going to be implemented, there's now workshops available. We've currently ran about 3 or 4. Tony, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe 3 right now, and they're going to be being released as we're trying to provide individuals and workplaces with resources to develop workplace specific WHMIS training. Again, this is going to be something that you're not going to be really available to buy over the counter, because every workplace is going to be a little bit specific. So giving you the tools required to provide this workplace specific is the focus of this half-day workshop. Also, if you look on WSPS.ca, we have a Ministry Occupational Hygiene campaign, frequently asked questions and compliance checklists. We also provide WHMIS training. The first 3 are going to be for your more generic, and the bottom 2 are going to be highly focused on, again, doing these specific work, or more specific, tailored to specific individuals or workplaces. The chemical program developments, additionally, another thing WSPS provides. WSPS, so we do occupational hygiene consulting, additionally training with designated substances, and try to address all of your respirator needs. Additionally, I see Tony just put something in the chat. It's going to be all our pre-recorded safety connections. This is also going to be recorded and available in either the coming days or coming weeks when it is published online. But there's a wealth of information already on the website. If any of the items that on that list right there tickle you, we highly encourage you to educate yourself and take some time to look at some of our pre-recorded safety connections. Upcoming, we do have 3 more. Air assessments are coming in January, managing chemicals in February, and a specific one to flammable and combustible liquids is coming next March. There's a wide variety of other ones that are available, so please refer to the calendar on our website. Seeing the time right now, I'm going to quickly go through all these and talk about one other thing. If you are at a facility that has received any Ministry of, I'll talk first. If you pay part of WSPS, we get paid through WSIB premium. So if you are a member of WSIB, I hope most of you are, there's a wide variety of complimentary member benefits that WSPS, as part of our mandate, provides to you. Additionally, if you receive a Ministry of, or the MLI-TSD order at your facility, we offer 1 full day of free consulting for you in order to address the order. So with that said, and 2 minutes left to spare, I will invite Tony back on to give a quick farewell.
Great. Thank you so much, Gord. And thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your participation today. And please don't hesitate to email either of us at any time if you have any questions about your hazardous chemicals or any concerns. We also have account managers in every area of Ontario that are here to support you with all of your health and safety questions and needs. So no question is a bad question. So please don't hesitate to connect with us. Thank you for doing all that you do to keep your work place safe.
Perfect.